Hello everyone, Floppy Waffles 69 here, and welcome back to the channel, guys. Today, we will be featuring the Tier 6 Tech Tree Light Cruiser for the UK. This is the Leander. Now, this is obviously going to be continuing our Down the Line series here down to the Minotaur of all the UK Light Cruiser line. And yeah, we find ourselves at Tier 6 now. Now, basically, what is the Leander? What does it do better than that of the Emerald? And is it an upgrade? Well, first things first, this is a big upgrade in regards of your firepower. The overall package has just gotten better and more enjoyable to play. You have upgraded your turrets now to the double turret, so you have 2 guns per turret for 4 turrets for now 8 shells going down range at a time. You still have shorter range, but all in all, the whole is a little bit better as it seems to be a little bit more compact than that of the Emerald, which is kind of squatty and lengthy. Yes, you have a little bit more freeboard, but still, the ship handles well and is quite diabolical out on the battlefield. Now, the Leander you see in game here in update 15.2 when I'm recording this video, or 15.3, I think it's 15.0, and here in 2026 is not the same Leander that if you go on YouTube and you look up Leander videos that will be showcased probably 2-3 years ago. The reason why there were a lot of changes made to this specific ship over the years. When this ship first got released, I mean, we were talking like sub 7.5 second reload, turret traverse was quick. This ship was insane, outperforming pretty much almost all other tier 6 cruisers in the game. Wargaming has since noted that and have made changes according to it, so we have now dropped it down to about a 9-second reload. Our turret traverse is much slower, and subtle things have been changed on this ship to get the Leander we have now in game to where it is. That being said, even the changes Wargaming have added to this specific ship, this ship is still really good. So just imagine how much better it was back then before any of those changes took place. And that's why I really do like the Leander, because this ship, no matter what Wargaming does to this ship still performs. Now, if you recall, if you are a longtime viewer on my channel, I made a review of the Tier 6 Premium UK Light Cruiser, the Orion 44, I believe is how you say it. And I stated that it is a good ship, but for some reason, I can't make it work. The armor piercing on that ship feels a little bit wonky. The Leander just feels better to play. And I had a couple viewers that said there is no physical way in hell you can like the Leander over the Orion 44 because the Orion 44 builds on that of the Leander, allows it to take a little bit more punishment, is a little bit more full throttle, and a little bit more interactive, essentially, and aggressive. And where I see those solid points that were made, to me, I like the Leander because it's simplistic in its own right and it still performs. And I don't have to take as many risks and put my ship in bad situations to still get this ship to give me good damage and support my allies, which is essential for me especially when I'm playing my cruisers. And this ship really does a good job of that. And I like that. I think that this ship, because it's not, having a super heal, doesn't have a speed boost, it doesn't get in the thick of it as quick, and doesn't allow the commanders to think and to justify more aggressive, outrageous plays. So it's not putting itself in those bad situations earlier on when there's still 12 enemy ships out there that can all point their guns toward you. I like the Leander because it takes and rewards patience and good support, and then as the game progresses, as we all know, cruisers' impact grows and grows and grows and becomes greater, and this ship really does emphasize that to a T. So without further ado, guys, let's get on into this review. So, like we always do with our Down the Line series, we are going to be looking at the armor layout first. And as you see from the Emerald to this, there is a lot more green. Now, usually this would be a bad thing. And I would say, yeah, like This is not good. This is only 13 millimeters of nose and 13 millimeters of ass with this, 16 millimeter of deck armor. Well, this is what I'm going to tell you. Sometimes less armor actually means better armor because it's going to increase the chance of overpens. And given the fact that your Citadel doesn't even stretch to the turrets, it's only here in the middle of the ship underneath the smokestack and spreading a little bit further out towards the rear end, but not quite to the turrets, is actually huge. You will find yourself, especially, or have you found yourself shooting at the Leander and getting nothing but overpens? Well, that is why, because you're probably landing too far in front of the nose or too far around the rear gun turrets. So make sure when you are shooting at the Leander, you keep in mind that you have to shoot mid-ship. The midship is where the Citadel is, and the Citadel plating is only 100 millimeters, so just enough to go ahead and arm all of those AP shells. So my final conclusion of the Leander's armor scheme, it's actually not that bad when we're comparing it to other light cruisers because the Citadel is relatively small and the ship is coated in such light armor that more often than not, AP shells are just going to go through, not even fuse, and get overpens. So that is a good thing. We want that when we're playing these super light cruisers. On the contrary, when you're fighting destroyers, when you're fighting ships that have semi-armor piercing, even HE, a little bit different story, right? Those are going to get those full pen values, and you're probably most often than not going to take massive damage from these ships. Again, I'm not expecting you to alter your play style based upon, oh, this guy's shooting HE, this guy's shooting large caliber armor piercing, and this guy's shooting semi-armor piercing. I know who and what I can get away from. No, I'm just telling you to keep in mind of certain ships, what ships armament has the capability of doing catastrophic damage to you while you're playing the ship. That's all I'm trying to emphasize by kind of illustrating on those specific points. Moving into the survivability, again, 28,700. Again, this is not a lot of HP to work with, but you do have one saving grace. You do have a heal, which is it was an awesome consumable. We saw that on the Emerald, and that obviously will carry up here into the Leander as well. This will carry all the way down the line, I believe, until the tier 8, or is it the tier 9? I think it's the tier 8. You actually get a super heal that has different values in regards to Citadel damage. As you know, you can only repair 10% of maximum Citadel damage. Well, these heals are a little bit different. I believe they can heal back, is it 50% or 33%? Don't really know the specific values on that, but that also, when you go to later on to higher tiers, is really going to allow you to stay in the fight a little bit more because, again, the armor scheme doesn't get much better than what you're seeing here on the Emerald, Leander, and when you see the Fiji, right? It's really pretty much going to stay the same. All that's going to happen is the Citadel is going to get a little bit more plating and the ships are going to get larger in size. So kind of a double-edged sword there. Okay, moving into the artillery on the Leander, we have the 4x2 152 millimeter guns. These are reloading in 9 seconds with a 180-degree turn time of 25, almost 26 seconds. Maximum main battery firing range is only 13.2. So as you see, we have less and less range. I believe the Emerald had, 13.5, 13.7, somewhere around that. So we actually have less range here on the Leander. And again, this is one of those changes that Wargaming made to hopefully balance the Leander. Again, this isn't that big of a concern for me as one, you're at tier 6. Engagements aren't pushed out too incredibly far at this tier yet, right? But you also have a heal and a smoke screen. So this is going to allow you to get up there kind of into the fray on the front line, supporting your destroyers, smoking up, popping your Hydra while you're in smoke, and being able to farm, essentially, while having, if you take a rogue Citadel here or there, or just any amounts of damage, you can heal back and stay in the fight a little bit longer. Again, I'm not really too concerned or worried about the 13.2 kilometer range. You can definitely make this range work. Again, positioning is going to be key, and always make sure you have a screen that is going to be spotting for you, as it be a destroyer, a submarine, whatever. You want to utilize spotting from other players. You don't want to become the spotter in this thing. That is the exact opposite of what I'm telling you to do with playing the Leander here, folks. Moving into your secondary battery, 4x2 102. Again, just like the Emerald, these are going to be like a little bit of a chip damage on a destroyer, the occasional fire set. I mean, it's only 5.2 kilometer range, 3-second reload, 6% fire chance, 1500 maximum damage. You have secondaries, but you actually don't have secondaries if you catch my drift. Moving into the torpedoes on the Leander, quite good. 2x4, 533 millimeter launchers. They do reload in about 101 seconds. They actually bump it out now with the upgraded torpedo tubes to 8 kilometers, which is nice. I believe the Emerald had 7. You have a whole extra kilometer to work with, which is huge. Just shy of 15,500 damage with 61 knot top speed and a detectability range of 1.3 kilometers. You do only have the one launcher of 4 per broadside there in the middle. The torp firing angles actually aren't terrible. Again, you will be exposing your side, which is going to make you susceptible to large caliber armor piercing. So just make sure you time your turn based upon reload schemes of enemy ships. Going back to the artillery, I will flash up the main battery firing angles. Not bad on this thing. Again, though, you will be exposing because you have the rear 2 turrets, you have the 4 turrets or whatever. It is going to kind of encourage utilizing all 4 turrets to bear at a single time, so you have 8 shells going down range. 9-second reload doesn't feel too good on a light cruiser, but again, with the short fused armor piercing on this ship, you can make this work, right? Your gun firing angles aren't incredibly good, so just be careful on that. They're definitely manageable, and you're definitely going to get use out of them and make them work, but again, it's going to make you susceptible to enemy fire, especially with large caliber armor piercing. Now, again, we look at the armor piercing, we have actually gone up in our main battery shell damage from 3,000 to 3,100. Again, the shell velocity and how the lead time works with this ship isn't that bad because you only have 13.2 kilometer range. I mean, the initial velocity coming out of the barrels isn't too fast at all, but because you have shorter range, I feel like it's definitely manageable, and the shells usually go where you want them to go. You don't have to add in any extra lead time to these shells in order to make these shells hit. They should feel right at home and pretty comfortable. They actually should feel better than the Emerald's shells, is what I'm trying to say. Again, just like I mentioned on the Emerald and the rest of this line, you have only depth charges on this ship. You are not a submarine hunter. The only way you're really going to kill submarines in these ships is if you catch a sub with its pants down, or the sub royally Fs up and overextends and makes it super easy for you to go ahead and do so. Remember, you have 2 charges with 2 bombs each, but these bombs do catastrophic amounts of damage. These are Royal Navy after all. They have 5k maximum damage on the bombs. They are huge. They will dev strike subs left, right, and center if you happen to catch a submarine off guard and overextending. A defenses on the Leander, a little bit better than what we saw on the Emerald. The only real thing here is that you can't slot defensive AA fire as a consumable on any of these UK ships. Your AA will get better when you go to the Fiji, the Edinburgh, the Neptune, and God tier on the Minotaur and Edgar. But right now, you're okay against equal tier CVs at tier 6. The second you run into a tier 8 carrier, all bets are off. You're basically, your best defense is actively maneuvering or concealing yourself within your smoke screen and not shooting so they can't see where you're at vicinity-wise based on your shell tracers. Maneuverability, 32.5 knots. Again, the turning circle radius is not 710 meters. That's because I have slotted the upgrade in slot 4. And your rudder shift time, it is 710 meters. The rudder shift time is not 6.3. That's because I mounted it in slot 4 for the rudder shift time. Because as you know, this ship gets the baked-in acceleration mechanic. So you don't actually have that option to slot that in your slot 4. So you're basically limited to turning gears or rudder shift time. Go ahead and take that. I think that's your safest bet. It's going to allow you that if your smoke screen is down and it's forcing your hand to open water, gunboat essentially in your light cruiser here, it's going to give you a little bit of extra leeway and freedom to do so, knowing that you can slowly and rudder juke and engine juke all incoming salvos if possible, right? Concealment on this ship, 10 kilometers base. You go ahead and slot the commander on the ship, and this is just some random commander I have. It is 9 kilometers on this ship, which isn't actually that bad. That coupled with your smoke firing penalty of 4.6 kilometers really is good. Again, you have that hydroacoustic search, so it's going to give you that about 600-meter gap between your hydro detecting enemy ships outside your smoke screen via you being detected by firing your guns. So again, if you are being detected after firing your main guns in smoke, just know there is a ship with inside that 4.6 kilometer range of your smoke firing penalty. So you want to go ahead and pop your hydro and begin maneuvering to make sure you disengage, because guess what everyone's going to do? They're going to point their guns at you, at the super light cruiser, because they know they're almost guaranteed a dev strike, though the Citadel plating on the Leander, like I mentioned previously in this video, is a little bit wonky and trolly at times, and it's a little bit smaller than people actually realize for the Leander. So yeah, guys, that is the Leander's kind of port analysis and all the statistics involved with its stats in all certain categories. Let's go ahead and check out the upgrades on the ship. So for the upgrades on the Leander, again, pretty standard here. What you want to do, you want to go main armaments modification 1 in the first slot. Second slot, I would engine room protection. You can opt to take the hydroacoustic search mod 1 if you so choose. Again, I'm kind of finicky. I didn't want to go ahead and utilize the coal to pick up this module in the second slot. So again, I would recommend it by all means. If you do, it's going to give you more action time. Again, for me, I didn't deem it necessary because I don't play the Leander that much. Sadly, I should play it a little bit more. In the third slot, it is aiming systems modification 1. I want to make sure my groupings are a little bit tighter and my shells are landing exactly where I want them to land. And in that fourth slot, I am utilizing steering gears modification 1. I want to make sure I can turn a little bit quicker so my rudder shift goes port to starboard a little bit quicker as well, so my ship can then follow it. Again, for the consumables, pretty self-explanatory. Damage control party, you have your heal, you have your hydroacoustic search that can detect ships up to 4 kilometers, and you have your smoke screen as well. Now, keep in mind, I didn't mention this in the Emerald video. These are just standardized smokes for the Royal Navy. These are not your short burst smoke generators that you see like on the Daring line. So when you pop these will disperse for a fair amount of time. They will last a fair amount of time, and then your smoke will be on cooldown. You won't have it up again because it's short burst. You'll have to wait a little bit, which I believe your cooldown time is 160 seconds until you can go ahead and pop it up again. And that's why you want to go ahead and take certain commander skills to make sure this can last a little bit longer, or so you can get your smoke screen up a little bit quicker. Again, some people ask in the third slot, well, is it viable taking the smoke generator modification 1? Absolutely. It's going to give you plus 20% longer smoke generator consumable action time, and it's going to give you the smoke curtain container, if it's a different type of smoke screen, up 20% longer. So basically your smoke's going to last 20% longer is what this is telling you. This is not a bad idea for me. I want to be rewarded with shooting my guns so that they're landing relatively where I want my shells to go, rather than just still waiting 9 seconds for my shells to kind of go, that's not where I aimed, right? You have to remember your ship fires every 9 seconds, which means that your overall DPM is not the best. I believe your overall DPM is only 165,333. Again, we compare that to other ships like the Perth is almost 200,000, right? So your DPM is not the best. So you want to make sure you almost play it like a heavy cruiser is what I'm trying to tell you. And that's kind of what I found the Leander to work well with. Almost play this ship like it's a heavy cruiser and it has the smoke screen, because your turrets traverse pretty much about the same speed as a heavy cruiser, and your reload is relatively long like a heavy cruiser. Okay, at the end of the day though, you only have 152 millimeter guns, so you're gonna have to factor that into the mix, and you don't have HE, but you can still very much punish broadsides because of that short fused AP, and because you're going to be at closer ranges. Really not that bad, right? Again, if we look at the AP shells just real quickly, one last thing I want to keep in mind is if we factor in our maximum range on the Leander, which is around 13.2, it's 13.2 kilometers, your AP is going to have a penetration of 96 millimeters. I want you to keep that in mind. So basically, when I'm shooting my guns, I will have at least a minimum of 96 millimeters of penetration at max range. And again, the closer you get to the target, you're bumping that up. I believe like 5 kilometers, you're going to have about 194 millimeters of penetration. This ship can Citadel. It will Citadel enemy cruisers. But again, you have to factor in, okay, are they angled to me slightly? How thick of their armor scheme are they, or is there, right? You have to factor in these certain things, okay? but I wanted to make sure I pointed that out so you kind of have a rough idea of what you're working with in regards to the penetration, millimeters of penetration component of this ship. Okay. Again, I will just recall the commander here that I was using last to try to build. I already mentioned what I want to be utilizing with this ship. Again, this is not like exactly what I'd recommend, because one thing I am taking last stand on this ship to see if that helps at all. Again, I will flash up the commander build here just so you can see kind of what I recommend for this ship. Again, I want to make sure I reward my precision and accuracy more so than my overall DPM. And because I only have a 9-kilometer maximum detect, plus I will most likely be using and farming from my smokescreen, I really don't see there to be too much of a reason to be picking up top grade gunner, at least in my opinion. I would stick more with utilizing the outnumbered skill because it's easier to proc at 13.2 kilometer range than it would be if you have like 19 point whatever kilometer range, if that makes sense. I know I'm not usually a big fan of this skill because this skill rewards cruiser players for putting their ship in bad situations. But again, because the way you want to be playing the Leander, because it has a shorter range anyways, it has a smoke screen and it has a heal, you're probably going to be throwing your ship into bad situations a little bit more frequently because of that, if that all makes sense to you guys. So anyways, that is the Leander from a port side analysis. Let's go ahead and check out some gameplay in the Leander. Alrighty, and here we are in the game here with our Tier 6 light cruiser, the HMS Leander. I will go ahead and flash up the commander build and the upgrades here on your screen now to kind of give you a rough idea of actually what I'm utilizing, not the other commander that I was flipping around in the port side analysis of this video. But anyways, here we are in battle with the Leander, and what can I say about this ship? This is a fun ship. It's fun, it's good, it rewards good positioning and good play as well. There are a couple things that, again, I want to continue to build on from our Emerald review, and then before we go ahead and talk about it here, I will say this: if you happen to stumble across this video and haven't yet caught the Emerald video, I would highly recommend you go back and check out that Emerald analysis, as it's going to help build and set the foundation and the precedent for what this line is. It is a little bit on the longer side, guys. All first ships in the Down the Line series usually are, because again, it sets the foundation a little bit better for you guys. You kind of see what the line's identity is, how to generically or generally play these ships, and what to kind of expect when we go ahead and climb the tiers of the corresponding tech tree, and kind of how we're building upon that foundation. So anyways, guys, coming back to the Leander here, the Leander is a really fun Tier 6 light cruiser. I definitely think this is a ship where a lot of people, when they're playing it, at first glance, they go, dude, 13.2 kilometer range, ew, 9-second reload, yuck. Like, there's a lot of things they're probably saying about this ship in the port screen inside of things before they even hop into battle, because they don't quite understand how those statistics will translate into game. I will tell you this: if this ship didn't have either the smoke screen or the heal, this ship would be a bit of a pain to play, okay? But because we have not one but both of those consumables, it allows you to, okay, I can play a little bit more aggressive, get into the fray of things, but at the same time, if I happen to take some damage, I know that I have a safety net and I can go back and kind of replenish some of that lost HP as well. The maneuverability on the ship is outstanding, as is all this line. This entire line feels great when it comes to maneuverability. But one thing I like about ships that have shorter ranges is this: when I'm shooting a specific ship and I know that ship's within my main battery detection or main battery firing range, I know that if it's the only ship within my main battery firing range and I somehow cut line of sight with that ship, then I actually fall off detection and no other ship around the map can see me or shoot at me. This is a massive advantage. It kind of turn a big weakness for ships usually having smaller main battery firing range into a massive strength, because then it allows you to isolate specific targets and kind of focus more on 1v1 gameplay rather than having to factor in the other ships in the far reaches of the map that can go ahead and snipe you when you're kind of unexpecting them or not expecting them to snipe you. It's something you kind of see with like the Italian destroyers too. That line is infamous and notorious for not having that much main battery firing range, and a lot of players bitch about it. And I understand why. Don't get me wrong, I get it. But again, we can either sit there and bitch about a problem like this, or we can try to turn that negative into a positive. And like a big way of doing that is what I recommend here, by making sure that you cut line of sight with the specific ship you're engaging. And as long as someone else is spotting that ship for you and you're not detected by anybody else, it basically becomes free damage for you to farm, if that makes sense. Again, I know I'm not the best at explaining things all the time. Sometimes I have to show it. But I think that beginning engagement with the King George or whatever it was, the Duke of York, I'm not 100% sure what ship that was. If you can do that, it's basically free damage that you get to farm. And because you're short fused AP, if you target specific parts of the ship, like the superstructure or the side of ships, if you get the side, it's going to translate to a lot of damage dealt by you. And you're going to see your damage total in the top right corner really start to rack up. I really don't find, especially with the Royal Navy light cruisers, the lack of HE a big weakness on this, because the short fused AP really does wonders, and I like what it does. The only time that this AP choice becomes a problem is when ships are pushing either into you or running away from you. That is when you're going to find the short fused AP really becomes aim dependent, and you really have to make sure your shells, based upon as you go up in tiers, the floater the shell arcs are landing where you want them to land, which it's going to have to land on the superstructure at this point in order to get damage. But again, if ships show you slightly amounts of broadside or are showing you broadside, you will get full pens because you have the improved AP ricochet angles, plus you have a shorter fuse time on your armor piercing, hence the name short fused AP. So it means less armor will have to be penetrated in order for your AP shell to detonate and do the maximum amount of shell damage possible, depending on, you know, saturation, if it penetrated, where it penetrated, specific parts of the armor scheme, all that stuff, right? All in all, I really do like the Leander's package, and it really does like translate really well. Now, here's one other big thing. You know, probably another question is, well, how does the ship up tier? I think the Emerald up tier is far worse than the Leander does. I think the Leander up tier is much better. The tier 7 games, it's fine, no big deal. Tier 8 games, usually a lot of ships fail at this when they get the double up tier. And again, I'm not a fan of the double up tier. I actually despise the double up tier, but I don't see it going anywhere as far as wargaming is concerned. So when you do find yourself in a double up tier game, because you have the heal, because you have the smoke, that's already better than 50% of the other tech tree lines out there, this ship does up tier a little bit better. Of course, you have to be conscientious at tier 8. That's when radar becomes a thing in game. So you're going to have to tread with caution on that front. But that being said, you just have to memorize the couple ships and nations that utilize it, play around that, and 13.2 kilometer range is more than enough range to work with. The only real big ones you're gonna have to deal with, or the big one in my opinion, or the big two, are the Soviets. You have the Italian and the Chapayev. Just know if they're in your game, know where they are on your flank, and then just make sure that if you're sub 12 kilometers of those two ships, you can potentially be radared by them, and most likely will be when they start seeing your shell tracers come out of smoke. All right. Continuing on the Leander, some other tips I have. Play it like a heavy cruiser. I think that's the best advice that I can give to you. And what does that mean? Pre-plan your turns, pre-plan your turrets, where they're lying, where they're aimed at, because when you get into tight quarters, having that slower turret traverse speed is going to be a bit of a hindrance to you. So you're going to have to make sure that you pre-plan your turrets to where they're going to be, so where the enemy is going to be, so they're ready to shoot. If you are caught with your pants down, it is going to be a bit of a problem to get those turrets ripped all the way around to then hence to engage the enemy ship that has caught you off guard. That is a big advice. That is the major advice I can give you. So what does that correlate to? Positioning and mini-map awareness. These are the two big things that, especially with all of ships, or especially cruisers, but especially with the Leander, I want you to focus on the most, are those two things. Where you're at, where you position your smoke screen, and where the enemy ships are detected. What enemy ships are detected, right? We talked about the Chapayev, the Italian, enemy destroyers, right? Again, your short fuse AP will eat up enemy destroyers, and enemy cruisers broadsides. Again, battleships are a little bit finicky. Unless they're showing you flat broadside or you're landing specifically on their superstructure, you're pretty much just going to shatter and ricochet with this short fused AP. So you're going to have to utilize caution when engaging those larger surface ships. Another thing with the Leander is the torpedoes. This is a Royal Navy trait. As you know, you can single launch your torpedoes. So you have the narrow spread, and then you have the single launch. This is very good, like I mentioned in my Emerald review. If ships want to be cheeky and try to push your smoke screens, you can go ahead and utilize your single launch torpedoes to nullify that. Again, you only have 4. Don't use it on the white indicator or the gray indicator. Make sure you space it out. Maybe a couple in front of the white indicator, maybe a couple behind the gray indicator. Like, you don't always want to aim it at the gray indicator, because that's just showing where the ship is going to be in the correlated amount of time if they keep their same speed and heading. Ships will usually cut speed and turn in, so kind of launching towards the inward portion of the gray indicator is not a bad idea. And again, single launch torpedoes, kind of a double-edged sword. I talked about this in my UK destroyer down the line series. Sometimes you don't want to utilize that, because you can go from potentially using a normal narrow spread to hitting 1 torpedo to using single launch and landing 0 torpedoes. So really, don't just use the single launch feature. It's a feature that you want to use when you know someone is going to be pushing you, or you're going to be ripping around the island and you need to focus on a Pacific ship and make sure you land those torpedoes on target. Going into my final thoughts about the Leander, guys, all in all, this is a very fun ship and a great successor to the Emerald. I think it's a big step up in regards of the power department with its artillery, with its hull, with what you can do, is what I'm trying to say. This ship is great. Again, battleships in the background showing you that if you're not landing on specific parts, even in a heavily armored battleship like the Vladivostok, even if I'm not landing specifically on that superstructure, I'm getting shatters and ricochets. So again, battleships, you don't really want to be gauging battleships unless you have to. They are kind of your Achilles heel here, boys. But yeah, final thoughts on this thing, guys. I really do like this ship. I think it's a great package. It's a great successor, like I already mentioned. The one thing that is kind of a bit of a hassle for me is because you are in a light cruiser, the turret traverse is a bit of a pain. But if you go in it, treating the artillery on this ship, not necessarily where you're aiming, but just treating the artillery with how, gun turret traverse and all that, more as a heavy cruiser, and your positioning of a heavy cruiser, I think you're going to actually have more success with this specific ship, the Leander, than you would be with other UK light vessels down this line. Okay, the armor is not heavy cruiser armor. Okay, the 203s, these aren't 203s, they are 152s, so you have to factor that in as well. The lack of HE usually would be a bit of a problem, but honestly, guys, because your 13.2 kilometer max main battery firing range, you're going to be up in the fray anyways. Ships are more often than not going to be showing you broadsides, so you usually can take full advantage of that as well. And the last tip I have, which again is the same as the Emerald, when you smoke up, don't just sit flat broadside in your smoke. Pop your hydro, go a quarter of a speed forward, and then again, after like 10 seconds, then make sure you go a quarter of a speed back. You have to be careful where you're at, because you will, if you accelerate too fast, you will drift out of your smoke screen, and then you are fodder. You are absolute fodder and will get lit up. So you have to be careful where you're positioning your ship and make sure you're cognizant of where your smoke screen radius is, because if not, you're going to be eating massive damage. If not, worst case scenario, you get sent back to port because you got dev struck. So it's one of those things you have to tread with caution and have a little bit of situational awareness with your vessel. Anyways, guys, we end up pulling out the dub here. I think, 81,000 damage in our Leander. Actually, funny enough, we did dev strike that submarine, which I thought was hilarious. It's always good to see that with these depth charges, right? I really was emphasizing that with these depth charges. These depth charges are no joke. We do pull up the E rank here, and again, just an all-in-all really good game, highlighting the pros and the cons of this ship. And that's why I picked these videos, guys, because it doesn't just go there. I don't just showcase 150,000 damage Kraken games. Like, look how good I am. Like, these games show specific things that I want to showcase to you guys. I think they get the point across to you. And that's all what this channel's about. This is the no bullshit channel. I give it to you straight. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.